This is what it is, the cover with Mr. Arun. Can I have a big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen? And एक चीज मैं जरूर कह सकता हूँ कि मैगजीन में सब जितने हैंडसम लग रहे हैं उससे ज्यादा इन पर्सन वो लगते हैं. इस बात के लिए और जोर से ताली प्लीज एवरीवन. Thank you so much, sir. Congratulations and all the best to all of you. I'll request all three of you to take your seats. I'll request Arun to please be with us over here. We are going to be having a special keynote from his end. This is going to be about seller and buyer maturity for the frontline sales. I'll quickly reiterate the topic. This is about seller and buyer maturity for the frontline sales. We have an expert over here in the house, and over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Good morning.
What's at the back?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate this. So, I think Ananda, when we we're looking at what we should talk about in a tech conference, and when I chatted with the team that we want to talk about buyer and seller maturity, they were a little confused. It was tech conference में आके क्या बात कर रहा है? And then we said, no, because everybody is working towards driving revenue, driving business, driving growth, and we thought it would be important to share some of the insights that we've had based on a lot of primary research and work that we had done on the field. So, a very quick introduction. I'm Arun, co-founder of Sharpsell, and we focus on driving what we call sales playbooks. So, our focus is to help distributed sales teams come across as experts when they speak to customers. And the way it started was actually the next sheet. Yeah. So I think the foundation started when my co-founder and I we studied in IIM Ahmedabad. We wanted to do some business. Back then I think funding startups were not like in vogue. So we said we'll bootstrap, do something on our own. We said we'll do something in the space of learning. And so initially we said we'll do a lot of work with CXO, CEOs, help them understand the hard skills of running the business. They liked what they did. Then they said, why don't we also align with middle managers? So that worked. Middle managers then looked at saying, can we also align frontline teams? And then we started looking at doing some of these programs for people on the front line. We realized that the way people on frontline look at learning and the way managers, middle managers, senior managers look at learning, it was very, very different. So, of course, you would get very good feedback. People would come back saying, sir, bahut badhiya tha, feedback 10 on 10, 9 on 10, whatnot. But the implementation was always a question. And somewhere about 2017-18, we realized that what we were doing as learning programs didn't work. And when we went and asked our clients, they said, yeah, mobile learning kar lo, abhi smartphones zyada aa raha hai. Data is kind of becoming cheap, so why don't you go and do some mobile learning? And we rolled out mobile learning, and what we saw was people did these mobile learning one or two times, and after that they would stop doing it. And of course, you call people up and say, कि बस क्या हुआ, क्यों नहीं कर रहे हो आप? And the answer was always कि नहीं सर, मॉड्यूल तो बहुत बढ़िया था, अभी मैं कर रहा हूँ. Or you had this hush tone saying, oh sir, अभी client के पास मैं call करता हूँ, and of course you are back. So which is when we realized that while mobile learning etc. was good, it didn't really work on the field. And we said we could actually spend some time with people. So Hanuman, who is the other co-founder, and I, we spent a lot of time going on the field. For example, we spent time in automobile showrooms, gone on field visits with pharma sales guys, sat in bank branches for days together trying to understand what sales even happens, because most people who come into banks come for a service request, etc., etc. And what we realized was, and of course, once you spend the full day with them, you become friends with sellers, and we had the same question at the end of the day saying, so learning ka kya hua? And the answer almost always was, you get a look of dejection, and betrayal, and they say, Arun, yaar, aapki gyan must do this. And we said, kya gyan? And the answer was, no, boss, this is a parallel track. Ye sab to chalta rehta hai, but dhanda ka kuch kaam nahi hoga isme. And then when we tried to look at things, was but why? Because in case you have to sell more, you have to know more, you have to put in effort. So all that logic kind of failed with frontline teams. So that's when we realized what people on the frontline wanted was immediate gratification. So for them, if you could give them something that they could use today, tomorrow, you are amazing, you understand their pain point, you are one of them. If you tell them, yaar, aaj kuch sikho, aapko ek mahine mein kaam aayega, that's already long term. Because for most people, their objective was how do I get through this week and how do I not, get gali in front of my other teammates this Friday or this Monday, whenever you have your weekly huddles and talks. So this is where we realized that we have to kind of focus on what really the salesperson wants, and that's when Sharpsell was born. So before we kind of started building the product, we kind of spent more time on the field. For example, Hanuman and I, we kind of stopped working on the business that we were running. So Hanuman became an LIC agent, and he actually sold insurance to understand how people, get into insurance, how people sell insurance. I spent a lot of time sitting on sales, with sales teams across multiple industries, and that's when we said we'll have to look at Sharpsell. So the whole idea of Sharpsell is that we are solving for two problems. We have to solve for two problems. First is capability building. You have to kind of have people increase capability, move up the ladder, etc., etc. But that's always a medium to long term objective, and that's never helping you today, tomorrow. That's for the long term, and with the kind of attrition that we are having in front lines, the question always is it worth investing this kind of money? So can we kind of have another tech solution that kind of solves for this? That's when we realize the other side of the coin is that we will also have to look at something that helps your seller come across as an expert in front of the client. So, and when we look at what is really the core of seller's issue, we realize that nobody in sales came in because they aspired to be in sales. You ask any kid, at least in India, nobody is going to say, "Boss, I want to have a career in sales." You want to become doctor, engineer, scientist, a fire truck wala, petrol bunk wala, but not sales. So it is never an aspirational job. Most people kind of did their graduation. They wanted some job, they didn't get any job, and while you got a sales job, and thus your career in sales starts. The second part that we said, instant gratification is something that they want. For them, it's like, abhi kya ho sakta hai? So if you can't give them something that helps them right then, it will work. And more importantly, when we ask people saying, "Boss, what do you want to do?" We have some of these things running. So their ask always was, "Boss, help me look like my manager's manager." Because when that manager's manager comes in, that person seems to have respect, that person is able to hold conversation, that person seems to know what the product is. So if you can help me become like my manager's manager, then that solves the problem. And of course, all this is in the flux that there is going to be attrition, people are moving out, and from an org perspective, that became a challenge. So this is where we also looked at what is happening in the organization. So organizations had, you had, a lot of enablement infrastructure. The questions that were asked were, because whatever I'm trying to do, is it going to kind of reach my end audience because I have 4 or 5 layers of people in between? And what exactly needed to be done was, kids move together. Yeah. So I think this is what organizations wanted. This was how do I kind of translate business needs to frontline behaviors? How do I really look at identifying skill gaps? How do I look at creating learning journeys? How do I look at monitoring, etc.? But even then, a lot of ask then was to say, how do I move their level from A to B? Over a period of time, and how are we going to, ensure that people inherently become better? And what we realized was that, while we want to make people inherently better, there are challenges in terms of people don't really have all the product knowledge. People don't have, and today the problem is our products are evolving fast. Industry competitors' products are evolving fast, and the customer's expectation is not that your seller is going to give you information. In most cases, your customer, whether you like it or not, does some research before they speak to your seller. Whether they have the right information or not is different, but unko kuch na kuch pata rehta hai. So the question is, how do you kind of bridge this divide, and how do you make this conversation relevant when a buyer has this conversation with your specific seller? And this is where we look at saying, you can't have one solution that solves for everything. So we said the solution that we are providing has to kind of look at 2 parts. One, what is your buyer's maturity level, and what is your seller's maturity? And this is a big problem for us, because till then, most solutions that are offered out there expected that, let's copy the winning behaviors of top salespeople. And the problem is the way a top salesperson works and the way a bottom salesperson works. Their approach in itself is very different. And it is impossible for the bottom guy to copy what the top guy is doing, because they're inherently different people. So that's why we looked at saying, how are you going to map this to? And what we looked at was, in the earlier one, we said at the broad level, you have your buyer, broadly, you have somebody who doesn't really understand what they're doing, somebody who wants to kind of know what it is, somebody who wants to be educated. And then you have somebody who's an experienced buyer who knows what it is, and they kind of, typically people will say, no, because I know everything, just tell me the price, etc. Same way, when you look at sellers, you have people who've been in the industry, who've been selling our products, who know what to do, who've kind of gone through, let's say, multiple cycles of our sales process, let's say in our company. And then you have people who are floating around, people who are new, people who are trying to add, add something to their career, their company, etc. And what we realized was any solution that we are offering has to kind of address different needs at different places. For example, for a seller who's like, let's say, relatively new in the company, and if they are talking to a buyer who's not super educated, then the idea has to be to say, well, how are you going to help this seller engage and educate your customer? How are you going to help the fundamentals of, let's say, if you're a BFSI, how are you going to help them understand the basics of finance, basics of your product, basics of the industry, and how are you going to help them practice and learn from peers? Same way, if let's say the seller is very mature, then you will talk about basics, but you're talking about how you going to really help them educate the customer, how are you going to help them, shorten the sales cycle, how are you going to improve their productivity, etc., etc. And typically, yeah. So this is, I'm just putting it here for us to quickly glance through. But the whole idea is that the solution that we are offering has to be different for different people. But the challenge also is that you can't categorize a seller and say, those you're kind of not good guy. You're in this maturity, you're in there. It's not easy to do that. And more importantly, it's very difficult to identify buyer maturity because I don't know how many of us here have built something like a need analyzer for the customers. From our team, how many companies of us have something like a need analyzer that we build for our customers, for our sales team? Okay, not a lot of you, but in some of the clients we work with, and we don't really believe in those need analyzers because we believe that customers are not going to give you that time to answer all the questions in the need analyzer question. The deal is, let's say we work with banks, and banks say, well, if only I know 20 things about the customer, I'll suggest the best product. But the reality is, one, it's going to be impossible for you to know those 20 things by default. And even if you're going to ask the customer, in all probability, the customer is not going to give you the response, not give you the time. And more importantly, the salesperson does not believe they have the outcome to ask these questions, in the most part. It's like you're even worried about asking 20 questions because you know that you're not going to get the answers and you want to figure out how to make the best of, let's say, the 2 minutes, 3 minutes time that you're going to get to make this impression. So that's when we realize that. It has to be like what I think there's a case study about what Target did with their advertisements. So I think this is a case study in the US where I think the story goes like this. So again, I'm narrating it as I read. I don't know how true this is, but broadly the story goes like, there's one father who kind of walked in saying, "Hey, Target, I saw your paper ads that came home, and how dare you advertise pregnancy-related, material to my 15-year-old daughter? That's like, very bad of you." Because, so there you have these physical post letters with products and rates and place. And Target went back saying, "Oops, I'm sorry, we figured out what it is." And then after 2 weeks, the dad realized that his daughter was actually pregnant. And then they looked back and they said, "Well, how do you know she was pregnant?" And they said, "Well, if we know that if somebody comes and specifically buys A, B, and C, I'm extrapolating and I have a persona saying that this is a pregnant woman and I'm going to give them ads." So, but then they realized that this is compromising the privacy of the person. So later on, they changed their advertising where they would say, if I'm listing 10 products on a page, they said, I'm going to give you 4 products that are hyper relevant to your persona, and I'm going to give you 6 products that absolutely don't make sense to you. For example, if I'm sending something to a pregnant woman, I will have 4 products which are very, very specific to, let's say, pregnancy or what you might need. But then I'll kind of add something like a garden de-weeder, or I will add something like a farm equipment, blah, blah. So those are things that a pregnant woman may not really be interested in. So which means your eyes automatically go to those products that matter to you and those interest you. But for a layman, when they look at it and open it, it will look like an assortment of 10 different things that, seemingly are very random. So we said we also have to make a tool where we can't guide people on what to do always. Because the moment you go and tell salesperson, because you have to do A, B, C in this order, they almost always drop the ball. And salespeople, I'm a salesperson as well, but they are not the most disciplined of folks. You want to follow a certain process, you want to do it. It almost always never happens unless there's a big stick and somebody is really, really enforcing it. So this is when we realize that we'll have to look at handling these different segments of users differently, and If somebody is doing well, then don't try to enforce certain things on them. If somebody is not doing well, you kind of do it. And this is where this kind of comes in. And yeah. And this is where Sharpsell really comes in. So the focus of Sharpsell, we decided, back then was to not really look at a sales process in terms of, lead management, orchestration, the rigor and rhythm, etc. We said we take a very specific niche, which is once you know that you have to speak with somebody, how are you going to ensure that that conversation goes well? How are you going to, the focus remains specifically on how are you going to use digital tools that focus on what the conversation with the client has to be, rather than saying जाके उनसे मिलो, आके बताओ कि क्या हुआ, because वो तो कभी होता नहीं. So then we said, how do we kind of get this to the next stage? Where we said, now how do I kind of help my sellers practice conversations before they walk in? One is I can teach them saying those ये 10 चीज याद रखो. That's difficult. So instead of that, can I flip it? It's more like a case study based approach where I put you in a scenario, the AI acts like a customer, and if you're able to kind of go through a few iterations of conversation, make all your mistakes outside before you walk in and make with the customer. Then how are you going to make these hyper-personalized products? How are you going to make these hyper-personalized pitches based on customer persona, which you only know based on 2-3 things that you know. Let's say somebody is running a mug, then that's probably the only data point you might have. You walk into that house and you see a doctor, then you have 2 data points. So with those limited data points, how are you able to make a hyper-personalized pitch is what we were looking at. And yeah. And most of our work today goes with distributed sales teams. So when I say distributed sales teams, any company which is selling a standard product, which has a standard offering, where the salesperson is expected to sell that offering, either standalone or in a combination with other offering. And you have sellers talking to limited number of stakeholders, Sharpsell works in. So, we started with insurance. Like I said, my other co-founder, he became an insurance agent. So today we work with companies in, let's say, insurance. We're starting with LIC, HDFC Life, SBI Life, Bajaj Alliance, Bharti AXA, PNB Mentor. You probably name the company, Max Life. We probably work with it. Then we started working with banks. We work with Axis, Kotak, AU, IDFC. Then we work with a few asset management companies. So this is where the financial services where we started. But then we also work with, we also realize the problem statement is the same. Then we work with companies across the spectrum, including, let's say, companies like Whirlpool, Mahindra, Tatas. You talk about Carrier, you talk about, Minda. So I think that's broadly what we do. So anywhere where you have distributed sales teams, we kind of help them sell better, and that's a niche that we look at. And I'm just putting a quick case on what we've done with the big financial service conglomerate, where we've been able to across the board demonstrate increase in productivity, increase in adoption, increase in usage without that being mandatory. And one of the reasons that we wanted to kind of talk about this, and one of the big realizations specifically with sales teams, is what we realized is you can't force people to use them, because between driving a process and getting numbers, getting numbers is always important. And whenever you try to push an initiative, the pushback that we always get is, boss, we want me to follow the process, but ye quarter ka number but kuch aur. So that's always a, whether right or wrong, that's always a pushback / threat that comes from sales team saying, boss, you want me to do something, then don't ask me questions about numbers, and that way change management becomes very difficult. So for us, it is very important to create tools that have a natural pull, where you use it. And with some of the clients that we work with, let's say with half the clients, it's not a totally integrated solution, which means it's sitting on the periphery, which means it's not mandatory, but you still have more than 50% of users coming and using it on a daily basis. So that's where the idea was, that how do you make it useful enough for this seller that they come and use it, so that they look as an expert and not because somebody is kind of following it. And there's a lot of work that we have done based on UI UX. Like I said, 2018 when we started this, we were really looking at, we started working with LIC agents, right? So most of these people were in tier 2, tier 3 towns. And so we had to kind of create something that, that absolutely worked on 2G network, where you kind of, and given the scale, you couldn't actually go and train people. So question was, how do you really make it like super intuitive that people come in and people kind of take this and run with it? Because, and another issue we saw is that, you always launch with 20 features, but 20 features never get adopted. and there are different pockets of people who use different features. So I think we've done a lot of work in terms of understanding the user and making it actually relevant to them, and I think the results speak for themselves. So I think thank you folks. I appreciate this opportunity. Thought we just kind of share some of these insights that we had got. We have spent some time in the field and we were able to relate some of the messages back. So yes, ma'am.
Can we have a mic passed to ma'am, please, over there?
I'll repeat the question. Is it for B2C or B2B? It works for both. So as long as you have, let's say, I'll tell you the kind of, let's say it doesn't work for somebody like an Infosys or a TCS, where you're going and absolutely, solutioning everything from scratch. But as long as you have products, or, for example, a current account, even though it is not a physical product, is a product. So what you have to offer as part of this product is constant across all sellers. So as long as you have products, it works. For example, a lot of our clients have both B2B2C, B2C, and B2B businesses, and it's used across. And the way, and to answer your question, the way the platform behaves for a B2B seller and the way it behaves for a B2B2C seller is very different, because the needs are different.
When you get back to this one more bit, so it's a personalized software. This is personalized from the point of view of your customer, the target customer, not personalized to the sales. Both.
It has to be both, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. We would have loved to take, we can take one last question and we are running a little bit years.
When you said B2B2C, that what level of sales force that you stuff on B2B or B2C who are not, highly educated, or they're not from, B schools?
Yes, for example, we work with LIC. So the LIC qualifications you have to be like help us. So out of 15 lakh LIC agents, I would assume more than like 7 lakhs are, have kind of, when they started out, they did graduate and they have kind of graduated through the file over a period of time. So it's, this is not for, this is not for like a standard chartered RN. The expectation is not that they use it. They also use it, but it's just meant for exactly the profile that you're talking about, because it's easy to take it up from there.
Thank you, Arun sir, for the session. Thank you for all the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, some things up. Can I have a big round of applause for sir, please? And many congratulations once again for the magazine feature. It's very, very well deserved. Can I have a solo photo of you on stage over here? A photographer, can we please have a solo photo, sir, over here in the center, please?
Sure.
Yeah. And in the meantime, a bit of an announcement. We're happy scanning from the BMG app, the Bharat Network Group app. I believe there are some interesting games happening over there as well. So, मुझे बोला गया है कि you have to play fairly. Because that's how you earn points. If you're not playing fairly, then you don't earn points. That is how it is. As simple as that. Thank you so much. Once again, a big round of applause. Do you want to add something, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone. I appreciate your time and patience.
Thank you so much, you, sir.